Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? Welcome to another episode where we talk about health, fitness, and wellness. Today I have two doctors. We're talking about blood flow resistance training. I apologize for new terminology. It's a new thing that's kind of taking over the athletic community, which is great. And I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Mike and Dr. Scott Corso. So bear with me 1 second, guys. How you doing, Dr. Mike?
Hey, Howard, nice to meet you.
The pleasure's all mine, bud. And then we have also Dr. Scott Corso as well. So just kind of introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are, and I guess we'll start with you, Dr. Mike, and then we'll move on to Scott.
Yeah, I'm the president and owner of B3 Sciences. We're a company that's taking this new technology that we've got from Japan. It's called blood flow restriction training. Some of your listeners may have heard about it. For about the last 20 months, we've taken this to the entire United States after perfecting it in Olympic athletes. Some of our current customers that people will know: Mark Wahlberg, the movie star, Kansas City Chiefs, and Patrick Mahomes, Dr. Mercola, Dr. Oz, Chris Duffin, the Kabuki strength guy up in Oregon. We got pro soccer teams, bunch of Olympic teams, and then over 11,000 everyday people, moms, dads, kids, people in wheelchairs. So excited to share this technology with you.
Fantastic. And Dr. Scott?
Yes, I'm a physical therapist. I've been a physical therapist for about 24 years and also a strength and conditioning specialist focused on functional strength. I was introduced to Dr. Mike about a year ago. I'd heard of blood flow restriction training prior to that. Actually had some bands that were more like just straps, and I tried those and I didn't find them very effective, and so I stopped using them. And because of the way they were designed, I would never put them on a patient. And then Dr. Mike introduced himself to me, showed me his bands, and I've been using them ever since. And they've been a game changer in both how I work out and also how I rehab my patients and my clients.
Yeah, it started out as like a post-rehab technology, did it not? Or am I misunderstanding that? If I remember correctly, I remember hearing about something similar to this like many, many years ago, but as like a post-rehab, like if you had like LCL repair or ACL repair, and it just kind of helps the body heal in that process. Or am I mistaken? Now it's kind of going into the masses.
Yeah, that's a good understanding of it, Hero. You know, two things happen. One, Dr. Jim Straygunderson, one of the top Olympic training docs, he brought this technology back in the performance world.
Okay.
We heard about it in about 2012-13. The Olympic speed skaters and swimmers were kicking everybody's butt. We thought they were doping. Come to find out, they were doing the Japanese version of blood flow restriction. This is performance exercise.
Okay.
Dr. Jim brought it to the United States, took it up to Park City. Bodie Miller, Lindsey Vonn, Michaela Schifrin, Ted Ligety, Olympic gold medalists. Results were unlike anything we've ever seen. Then he started applying it to runners, seniors, people who were injured. And then about 2 years later, there's a field of rehab that kind of took some surgical tourniquet devices that were used for cutting off blood flow and figured out you could do a form of blood flow restriction training. So then that kind of grew in the rehab world. So it's become fairly popular in the rehab setting. Where we set ourselves apart is that we are taking BFR. We're the only company that's taken it to elementary school kids, high school athletes, couch potatoes, pickleball players, golfers, seniors. I mean, across the board, as well as physical therapy. And, you know, Scott mentioned the types of bands. I've got some of them here. You know, we can kind of go through those. But here we are 8 years later after finding this, and this is for everybody.
Which I understand. So it's one of the things that I understand is like explain to like the people that don't know what you're talking about. Explain exactly what it is. It's obviously it's blood flow restriction, but in the essence, like what's the science behind it?
Well, the easiest way to understand it is if people can see me, and I'll give a visual and a audio. When you are exercising, you have a flow of oxygen coming in and out of your muscles.
Correct.
Providing steady oxygen. Let's call that flow rate a 10. It's up here.
Okay.
For you to fatigue your muscles with high intensity exercise and get adaptive response, bigger, faster, stronger, more endurance, lose weight, you've got to exercise at a rate that exceeds the flow of oxygen coming in. If you do that, you feel the burn.
Correct. That's the overall principle.
You produce lactic acid. Here's the problem. 98, 99% of the population, especially couch potatoes or normal everyday people, and especially in the rehab setting, they're all exercising down here at about a 5 to 6 oxygen usage.
Okay.
So what we've done for hundreds of years is we're focused on this using oxygen side of the scale. How do we do it more efficiently? How do we create another device? What's the new way to work out? Well, what we figured out is over here on this side of the scale, what would happen if we lowered your oxygen available flowing into a 5? And I'll explain to you how we do that. Now, all of a sudden, when you're doing rehab with a certified BFR instructor like Scott, or you're going for a walk, or you're doing Zumba, or you're swimming, or you're anything, hitting golf balls, which is using oxygen at a 6, that normally wouldn't do anything. But now, because oxygen's only flowing at a 5, you're feeling a fatigue in your muscles like you're doing high intensity exercise. I'm talking about walking the dog, and you're producing lactic acid like you're running sprints. Now, how does that happen? We simply do what's called blood flow restriction training. A lot of people will think, ooh, that's a blood pressure cuff. Well, there are some devices that are like that. This is a flexible band that has multiple air chambers. So when we blow it up, it does not act like a tourniquet. Cannot cut off blood flow. We have patented this. We're the only one that does this. So now what's it doing? It's like the garden flow of water is flowing back to the heart. Everybody knows what a garden hose is. If you turn down the garden hose a quarter of a turn, it slows down the flow. That in turn drops the in-out oxygen. And now anybody, rehab setting, going for a walk, working around the yard, doing light exercise.
So that what you're talking about, or at least from what I'm understanding, is oxygen uptake, and the aerobic threshold is going to be lower because you're not receiving oxygen to the muscle tissue.
There you go.
What I get. One of the things that you sent me video wise is how does that actually affect like muscle growth? Because one of the things that you said in the video was that it affects muscle growth. And from my understanding, and again, I'm just a layman here, is muscle growth is usually dependent on micro tears to the muscle. It's hypertrophy is damaging the muscle, the repair of the muscle. It prepares itself for the future workout or the future load that you're going to do. As far as oxygen uptake, it's the same kind. At least from what I understand, it's the kind of the same principle of. I'm in the martial arts world. And marathon runners, cyclists, they train at elevation. Your body gets used to a limited amount of oxygen uptake. Therefore, when you get a surplus of oxygen, your body just gets more efficient. Kind of the same principle, but a little bit different. So how does it actually affect like muscle hypertrophy?
Well, you're exactly right. Until now, you had to use heavy weights and load and volume to force the fast twitch muscle fibers to activate. Very, very simply, we have slow twitch muscle fibers that are aerobic using oxygen. We have fast twitch that are using the glycogen reservoir. You can do aerobics and slow twitch all day long. As you know, Hero, you're not going to build muscle.
Right.
You got to activate the fast twitch. What happens when you activate the fast twitch? You feel the burn. I won't go into the chemistry. You get growth hormone afterward. Growth hormone goes in the liver, creates IGF-1. You get protein synthesis. You build bigger, stronger muscles. Now, previously, without the bands, we have to do high intensity. We got to flip tires. We got to lift heavy weights, and we got to tear muscle. The micro tearing is not what's causing the growth. The micro tearing is the result of fatiguing fast twitch muscle fibers with a heavy load. What is causing the growth is lactate is coming off of the glycolytic pathway. Simplest terms, when you are doing fast twitch muscle work, You are burning the glycogen reservoir, that backup glucose for energy. The byproduct of that is hydrogen ions. You feel the burn and circulating lactate. That's what triggers the brain. The brain doesn't go, oh, hero, wow, you lifted a lot of weight, you tore a lot of muscle. No, the brain goes, that's circulating lactate. I know what that is. I'm going to give you growth hormone afterward. Now, think of this. Going for a walk would never in a million years fire your fast twitch muscle fibers. Doing rehab in Scott's clinic would not activate fast twitch muscle fibers. Scott would have to load his patients up. He can't do that. We'd have to load people up who don't like heavy weights. But when you reduce the oxygen with the bands, now what happens is the slow twitch muscle fibers, first thing that happens is they run out of oxygen. So I'm sitting here going for a walk and I'm using more oxygen that's available, and my slow twitch muscle fibers in my leg are out of oxygen. Something fascinating happens that we figured out. The muscle crossover recruits the fast twitch as soon as the slow twitch are deactivated. Now I'm firing fast twitch muscle fibers and I'm going for a walk. I'm in the glycogen reservoir. I'm producing hydrogen ions. I feel the burn and I'm dropping lactate, and I'm not tearing anything. I'm not spiking cortisol. I'm not inflaming any joints. And studies show your muscles grow just as fast, if not faster, because you're doing the same thing. You're fatiguing and firing fast twitch muscle fibers like you're doing high intensity. You're just doing it dramatically more efficiently by reducing oxygen to the slow twitch, and then the muscle crossover recruits. So Scott, give an example of what like one of your patients will feel when they put the bands on and kind of how that relates.
Sure. And the beauty of this is that, you know, when that growth hormone is released, it goes throughout the whole body. So it's a systemic change. The whole body is affected. So for example, I have a gentleman right now I'm working with. He had a rotator cuff tear. So he came to me just after the surgery. His arm's in a sling. He can't do much of anything with it other than squeeze a grip strength tester or a ball and maybe do a little submaximal isometrics. So very, very little he can do with that arm. But what I did is I put the bands on his legs, got him feeling the burn, that released that growth hormone throughout his body. And then because I was able to do just a little grip strength with that other arm and do some submaximal isometrics, that sent out a signal. So the growth hormone would go to the receptors in those muscles that I did very little exercise with, and help to create some growth and strength into those muscles without risking that rotator cuff tear. And in fact, the amazing thing about it was this guy, 3.5 weeks after he had his rotator cuff repair, just before he's going on back to the doctor, had a sling on the whole time, took a sling off, and he had full range of motion coming up this way, coming up this way. Saw him today, had a little scare. He told me, you know, he's now about 8 weeks out. He said he was helping move his boat. He slipped, fell hard enough that he cut the hand that he had the rotator cuff tear in enough to get stitches, and didn't re-tear the shoulder at all. So he developed enough strength in that rotator cuff to protect him from that fall. So it's pretty encouraging.
So what I'm understanding from what both of you said is that the blood restriction flow just goes through the muscle tissue at a faster rate because of the reduction of oxygen. So basically the slow twitch is going to basically burn through it because there's not enough oxygen present in order for you to go to the fast twitch, which therefore means that you're going to be able to get the same effect with less workload.
A third of the workload. For example, I could curl 2-pound dumbbells, and I've got some here.
Now, the only question that I have, and it's a little bit more towards Dr. Scott, is from my understanding, the body only responds to force. So the communication that your body feels is through force. So if there is a muscular gain from the work, in other words, yeah, I can see how if you burn through the oxygen, that you're going to go into the fast twitch muscle faster, which means that you're going to get more muscle growth. You're basically taxing muscles that are going to be bigger. That I got. The only thing that I have concerns with is that structurally, your body is not going to respond because you're reducing the amount of load onto the body. Is that correct? Or am I wrong on that?
I mean, force is a factor, but I think in this case, we're also looking at a chemical change. Because you have the blood flow cuffs on, it changes it kind of creates a disturbance in that muscle that triggers a part of your brain to release that growth hormone. And that growth hormone goes throughout the body, and any muscle that's been exercised, it's going to attach itself, and you're also going to get the release of that IGF-1 that Dr. Mike was talking about, which is an anabolic, so muscle producing, strength producing hormone, and that's what's going to lead to strength and size changes.
Okay. But I go back to the same question. I get that. We're talking about muscle hypertrophy, muscle growth, but I'm talking about structural response. So a good example, again, it's where I talk about is like one of the examples you gave is like striking. Like one of the benefits to resistance training is bone structure, density, joint integrity. So in other words, if you increase the load, your bone density is going to increase. If you increase the load, obviously safely, if you increase the load, your joint structure is then has to respond according to that force. So even though you are getting muscular gain from using this process, are you going to also get that same process from the structural side? Or is it something that you're going to have to kind of combine the two, where you're going to do some of this as well as regular lifting? Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I'm asking the question properly.
Yeah. Studies show, Hero, that bone density goes through the roof. We have 70-year-old ladies that are walking with this, getting rid of their osteoporosis. So what's going on? Mechanical force training causes fatigue of fast twitch muscle fibers. Not the force, it's the result of fast twitch muscle metabolism, lactate coming off that goes through the afferent nerve pathway up here, which triggers growth hormone, IGF-1, and then bone-specific alkaline phosphatase. So there's two mechanisms you can do that. You can mechanically overload and get to the metabolic crisis dropping of lactate, or you can do BFR and get to the same place. Now, here's another point. When we are we're talking here about general population rehab, me, I'm 57, I'm not an athlete. If we're talking athletes, we use an alternating workout principle. I have boxers, I have UFC, I have soccer players, I have the USA Olympic weightlifting team. We recommend for those athletes, distance runners, every other session BFR. For example, a runner, we want to get those long runs in, but guess what happens on the short runs that instead of 10 miles or 2 miles, they hit a deeper fatigue metabolically than they would at 10 miles. And they get some completely different benefit, more mitochondrial adaptation, more VO2 max. Same thing with heavy weightlifters. If you're not going to compete.
Explain that. How is it affecting the VO2 max? Because that's oxygen uptake, not like that's lung capacity, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So explain to me why that, because the oxygen uptake at the muscular level there's one thing, but how does that affect the VO2 max? Is it because the body is requesting oxygen, it's not able to arrive to the destination because of the restriction, which in turn forces the lung capacity to increase? Like, explain that a little bit.
So what we do, and we do endurance work, or we box or do the stuff you do for a period of time, we're creating a metabolic crisis in the slow twitch muscle fibers, specifically alpha hypoxy factor, which triggers the cardiovascular system, nitric oxide, mitochondria, all this endurance VO2 max stuff. Let me ask you a question. If you were to get on the elliptical machine and you had an endless supply of water, how long could you go?
I don't know. I haven't been on an elliptical machine in many years. I have no idea.
If you were to just start sparring, how long? You could probably go for 8-10 hours, couldn't you?
Yeah, if I was doing just a plain elliptical, I would probably go for quite a while.
Right. which means you're hanging out at the 85% fatigue of slow twitch muscle fibers. Scott will tell you this. I'll have him jump in. When you get on the elliptical or start sparring with this, I get on the elliptical, and in 4.5 minutes, my muscle slow twitch, they tap out. I fall off and I can't even move.
Right.
I've gone from 85% fatigue of slow twitch to 95. Let me ask you a question. What do you think would happen is if we moved to the fatigue point of slow twitch muscle fibers, I don't care if it's shorter, longer, same duration, from 85% to 95%, creating more hypoxia, you're going to get more adaptation. And this is what some of our endurance people have seen. They're training less, and their VO2 max time to exhaustion is going through the roof. It just blows their mind.
Okay, so then the next question is, at least my thought process would be that it's all based on oxygen, but then what's the DOMS effect? In other words, DOMS, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Effect of actual training. So in other words, like the way I think about it, because I'm also in my 40s as well. So one of my biggest problems is that I'm very active, and my problem is recovery time.
Yeah.
So I'm usually the old guy in the room when it comes to jiu-jitsu. The average age bracket is like 28 and under. So it's like I have to kind of figure out that weird balance of training and being able to recover. Does it change? Because of the fact that you're
gonna be shocked. You're gonna be shocked.
Okay.
Because you're not micro tearing muscle.
Right. That's what I'm getting at. Right.
Everybody rub your hands together like this. That's light exercise.
Right.
Okay. Muscles don't micro tear. Now rub your hands together as hard as you can. Push real hard and rub them. That's heavy weights. It's additional mechanical tension causing an inflammatory response from sarcomeres rubbing up against each other.
Yeah,
we call it micro tearing. That's not occurring. You're not getting this cytokine post-inflammatory response. You're not getting a cortisol release. I mean, Scott, you jump in here. You've worked out with this stuff to the point where you've, gone hard. Are you ever sore?
No, I'm not sure, and that's the beauty of this, because then I can do another workout the next day, because I even though I've worked hard to feel the burn, once I'm done, I'm not having inflammation in my joints. I'm not feeling sore, so I can go at it again the next day, and because of that faster recovery.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we have people, Hero, like LeBron James puts these on the next morning after he plays basketball, and he just goes until he gets a light burn. And that stimulates nitric oxide, vasodilation, flushes everything out. The recovery side of this is fascinating because we're not mechanically overloading muscles to the point where we're getting that inflammatory response. Now, again, if you are an elite level athlete, this is not, we don't abandon training principles. You would add this as a tool. This might be one of every 3 workouts. This might be 2 out of, for guys like me and Scott who aren't competing, this is a godsend. We're not loading our body. We're not sore. We're getting all the growth hormone. We're extending the life. We're sleeping better. And we're not breaking down our bodies. So from
especially with
us, it's just
H1 helps you sleep deeper. That's what That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. It makes sense. Just on a logical standpoint, you're basically saying that you're stressing the muscle tissue without, like you said, mechanical stress. So therefore, your nervous system, your bone structure is not being taxed quite as much. So the recovery time is going to be a whole lot less. Now, when you say 1 to 3 times, is this something that you're using it as like I wouldn't say like a recovery workout. That's not the right terminology. No. Yeah. But it's like
this is you want to run faster, you want to jump higher, you want to lose weight. This will take you to new levels you've never hit before. The USA Olympic team is fascinated by it.
Yeah. So that's explain that, because a lot of people that I deal with are also athletes as well. So this is something they can kind of like where they can. It's a good way for them to add like an additional high threshold, taxing their body unnecessarily. Especially when I deal with on my side, I deal with a lot of black belts and stuff like that, where they're usually by the time you get black belt level, unless you're like a competing athlete, you're already a little bit older. So this is something that would probably help them as well. Like, how would you then implement this into like your actual workout? You know what I'm saying? Like. Oh
yeah. I got a 2-time world champion, Vinny Mang. He's on the USA Olympic team.
Okay.
He spars with it. He does all his training with it.
Okay.
In 8 weeks, he was striking 6% harder, and he's already an Olympian.
Okay.
Think of this. This forces you to get out of this load and volume and breaking down mode, and you start thinking it's about using up the fuel in the slow and fast twitch muscle fibers to create a deep metabolic crisis, a drop in oxygen, a lot of lactic acid. So what you realize when you do this, and Scott, you jump in here, is now it's about how do I get to the deepest fatigue of both my slow and fast twitch muscle fibers with the least amount of work in the fastest amount of time. That's going to create the most growth hormone, the most adaptive change, and the least amount of stress and need for recovery. Scott, jump in there.
Sure. And then because of that happening, I mean, that triggers all that protein synthesis that takes place in all the muscles that have been exercised. So you're going to get bigger change. Wasn't there the study about even just doing knee extensions? That one was amazing to me, was seeing how just they did a study where they had people just do knee extensions and they improved their VO2 max because they fatigued all those slow twitch fibers. And then there was another one where, right. And then the one that really caught my attention and got me going on was that the study with, they did a study with middle-aged men, had them do bicep curls. Okay. And they used half the load with the bands on, and they had an 8 times greater release of growth hormone. And that's the magic stuff that's going to make the changes in strength and muscle size.
Have they done studies on how it affects tendon and ligament?
Yep, they sure have.
Okay.
It increases tensile strength of tendons. We get Dr. James Andrews, the #1 orthopedic surgeon in the country, is doing this on all his ACLs. ACL, just for example, are coming back in 5 to 6 months. Used to take 9 months. Patrick Mahomes dislocated his kneecap, stretched his patella tendon. Rick Burkholder, head athletic trainer, Kansas City Chiefs, had him in the water the next day walking in the bands. What's he doing? He's stopping the deconditioning which occurs. He's creating enough fatigue, a little pump and burn, to drop nitric oxide and create growth hormone, speed the healing process. Mahomes was supposed to be out 6 weeks. He was playing in 2 weeks. We got fractures. We got the #1 pickleball player in the world. He fractured the bottom of his heel bone. Doctor told him 6 to 8 weeks. He was playing in 2.5 weeks. Why? When you have injury, you have shutdown of growth hormone. You're not exercising. You have cortisol spikes. Imagine if you were to keep growth hormone surging, which is what determines the rate of repair, how fast repair happens. By working a non-injured body part, all of a sudden things heal twice as fast. So like Scott said earlier, I got this rotator cuff guy, and he's got the bands on his legs, stopping cortisol, cranking nitric oxide, stimulating blood flow to heal, getting growth hormone surging afterward, which causes repair. He's doubling the guy's healing time just by working a non-injured body part. And then he's doing just enough on that injured tendon, to a little mechanical force in there, but enough metabolic crisis to stimulate the tendon. It's going to get the blood flow. It's going to get the nitric oxide. It's going to get the growth hormone. It's going to get the IGF-1, when normally that wouldn't have been happening.
So again, I asked the question of like, what dictates the ratio of using it to not using it? Because I see what you're saying. Basically, what this is working on is a metabolic response but you also need the mechanical stress. So the combination of the two is going to be the best formula. But what dictates the balance? Is it the recovery time? Is it like what dictates that?
I think in 3 to 5 years, you're going to see a complete shift. I think you're going to see shifts away from all this heavyweight stuff, because the studies show. There's a study on high school football players out of Kansas on
Right.
back squat. Now, these are high school kids, but they're football players.
Right.
The group that did 1/3 of the typical weight had greater strength change than the group doing the heavyweight, and less load and less risk.
Interesting.
Now, why? Think about it. Go ahead, Scott. But one last point, and Scott, you jump in here. What's happening, Hero, is we're hitting a deeper fatigue point with the bands on. Scott, jump in there.
Now, I was just going to talk about with the tendons, you're thinking about elasticity and explosiveness. And a great example of that would be the Division I volleyball player who just put the bands on and just started practicing her jumping drills. And correct me, how many weeks was it that she had a 6-inch increase in her vertical?
6 weeks, 6-inch increase in vertical.
That's a lot.
Yeah, we got a 70-year-old volleyball players on the U.S. national team, 7.5 increase in vertical.
Yeah, the reason why I was asking the tendon is just because I also came from the bodybuilding world, and you would run into a lot of the problems with a lot of the high-level bodybuilders, where basically, unfortunately, because they're using steroids, they would get massive muscular growth, but then they would do it in such a short period of time that their tendons wasn't going at the pace of the muscular growth, that they would literally rip their muscle off their body from lifting like the ridiculous amount of weight. So that's why I was kind of asking that, because again, I go back to a little bit on my side where we do combat sports where there's a lot of joint manipulation. Like a good example, I was training last night. Some guy who's very flexible, didn't tap in enough time, dislocated his shoulder and his elbow. You know what I mean? So that's why I was asking about the tendon thing, where in my mind, it's like, okay, it makes sense from what you're saying, the oxygen, basically oxygen deprivation, so that you get a metabolic response at a lower rate, so you don't need to increase the load quite as high and get a better response from the body. But that's why, that's at the muscular level. But that's what I'm trying to figure out, because from my understanding, but from my understanding, again, that's why I was asking about the bone thing as well. Yeah. Is that the tendons don't respond, tendons and ligaments don't respond in the same way as muscular tissue of the actual muscle belly, which is why I was kind of asking that. Like, in other words, if you get that increased curve of muscular gain, is the tendon and ligament kind of gain also riding at the same climb? Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making myself.
Oh yeah, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
What happens when you load the body with heavy weights? You create a lot of tensile strength on tendons.
Correct.
You're doing micro tearing, whether you believe it or not. You're micro. That's why all of a sudden a guy reaches down and grabs a bicep curl and the thing rips.
Right.
It didn't rip right there. You've been ripping it for
a while. Yeah.
Right. If you're not putting that heavy weight on, that number one dramatically reduces risk. Now,
that makes sense.
If we get better nitric oxide release, which increases blood oxygenation.
Okay.
One of the number one problems, Scott, you'll address, is tendons don't have a blood supply. So they get a lot of ischemia, lack of oxygen, micro tearing, scarring. Now they really got a lack of oxygen. It's a tear or rupture waiting to happen. When you do this kind of training, it increases blood flow, hyperemia, and studies have shown this, and you get better blood flow and hence oxygenation into these areas where you got tearing. Perfect example, we got ladies who have had fibromyalgia their whole life and it's gone in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Wow,
that's amazing. I think it's really starting to get it's a paradigm shift. It's moving from a strictly mechanical loading to induce the fatigue to more of a hormonal response. For example, if you look at bone density, a lot of the current thinking is you need to really load those joints with a high load in order to create that bone stimulation. But and you could tell the story, Dr. Mike, about the couple that worked out in Dr. Stray Gunderson's center, and if you could just maybe share a little bit about the details about that and how their bone density changed.
We think that it's the heavy weights causing the bone change. That's not what's causing it. The heavy weights are the tool to create the firing of the fast twitch muscle fibers to create the metabolic change in the muscle, the dropping of lactate. What's it stimulating? The afferent nerve pathway. Again, here are your brains up here going, your brain's regulating those fast twitch muscle fibers and that homeostasis. What's the pH? What's going on? It's not going, whoa, you lifted a lot of weights. Doesn't care. You can be lifting 500 pounds.
Well, that's why I asked the question about force. That's the body's way of communicating is through force. So from what I'm understanding from what you both just said, is it the bone density response? This is me thinking logically. If you go through from slow twitch to fast twitch to no twitch, because basically you're getting fatigued.
Exactly.
Nothing is left. Then the additional stress is now going to fall onto the bone structure. So because of the fact that you have blood restriction, you're getting then the metabolic rate, everything gets fatigued faster. So then that force that is usually taken up by the actual muscle tissue, because it's already maxed out its metabolic response, now that force is now being directed towards the bone structure, which then
that's the part which I used to believe. That's not what's happening.
Okay.
Nothing to do. Your bones don't respond to force. Your bones respond to the physiologic change of exercise. Again, your bones don't get stronger because of the weight. Your bones get stronger because you use the weight to fire the fast twitch muscle fibers. The firing of fast twitch muscle fibers and fatiguing very simply drops lactic acid. That's the trigger. Your brain does not pay attention to weight and go, whoa, you're lifting a lot. Your brain goes, that's lactic acid. I'm going to give you growth hormone. Why? The body wants to prepare it so that it's ready to handle this fast twitch muscle recruitment better next time. We know this. We get stronger. We get faster. Then growth hormone comes out. It also triggers bone-specific alkaline phosphatase. They did a study of 16 women walking, and over the course of 16 sessions of walking, their bone-specific alkaline phosphatase increased 25 times. Why? They were getting a burn in their legs that was dropping lactic acid that was triggering the signal. Or you can go in the gym and lift heavy weights. We do that with women. We're going to break every bone in their body. But if we do it with this type of exercise, we get to the same place. Metabolic crisis, firing of fast twitch muscle fibers, disturbance of homeostasis, lactic acid, feel the burn, body adapts. And what's fascinating about, and I've been doing it.
That was hard to wrap my head around. That bone density one's hard for me to wrap my head around.
Oh, and it was for me too. But I see fractures heal in 2 to 3 weeks, Hero, and they're not even putting any load on the fracture site, which tells us it has nothing to do with creating a load. It's a systemic adaptative response in the body, meaning the body has these adaptative mechanisms, growth hormone, bone-specific alkaline phosphatase. Let me give you another example. We have these ladies that have hypothyroidism.
Okay.
And they don't understand what thyroid stimulating hormone is. Nobody ever told them. Thyroid stimulating hormone's up here in the pituitary. It tells the pituitary what to do. Excuse me, it tells the thyroid what to do.
Okay.
When you get high intensity exercise, drop lactate along with growth hormone, you get thyroid stimulating hormone. When thyroid stimulating hormone goes to the thyroid, guess what it stimulates? Thyroid production. These ladies are getting off their thyroid medication. Their doctors are going, what in the world are you doing? They're getting the adaptative signal to cause the thyroid to increase the metabolism. Why? The body's under a metabolic stress. Exercise. It's going to prepare it for next time. I mean, that's just another one of these adaptative responses that happens when the body either gets high intensity exercise, which most can't tolerate, or gets to the same metabolic crisis through using BFR bands.
Sure. I'll give you an example of bone healing with one of my patients. I had a woman in her mid-50s. She fractured her fibula. So she was in a boot and I saw her shortly after she got a surgery. And the whole time she was in the boot, but I exercised her with the bands. We're doing exercises that are getting a burn in her quads. We didn't take the boot off other than, maybe just some gentle submaximal isometrics. And within 5 weeks, she went back to the doctor and he looked at the x-ray, couldn't find the fracture line. She took off the boot and she went for a nature walk for about a quarter to a half a mile the next day. All because of, that bone stimulating hormone was fired.
Yeah, that last one's hard for me to wrap my head around. I get it. I mean, you're obviously giving me many examples, and it sounds like it's all like again, it goes back to chemistry. It's all metabolic responses. That's what it boils down to. In my mind, I think in my mind with the bone density, especially at the joint level, I just think force. I think mechanical stress is basically going to get a structural response to prepare itself for the future.
Yeah.
So in my mind, that it's just hard for me to kind of wrap my head around what you're saying. But obviously, you've had personal experience of it. They've done studies on it. All the other stuff, when you're talking about the oxygen uptake, the purate, all that stuff that's kind of happening to the body on the chemical side, completely makes sense to me. Yeah. I also understand the recovery rate is going to be faster because you are putting less mechanical stress, but getting a higher metabolic response. Yeah. Completely get that too. The only one that's a mental block for me is the bone structure.
Listen to this story. Okay, so Cassandra La Madrid, she's a national ranked strength girl. She works and runs the BFR department for Chris Duffin up at Kabuki Strength in Oregon. Chris is the only guy to ever squat and deadlift 1,000 pounds. He's world famous. Okay. So they got the bands. I did a podcast. She actually took my certification course that Scott's taken. He's now B3 BFR certified. But so the pandemic hits. And she can't get to anywhere to lift heavy weights. And she calls me. She's like, Mike, I guess I'm going to have to put you told me that this is going to work. I'm going to trust you. I said, Cassandra, all I want you to do is reproduce the movements you would normally do, but do it with 1/3 of the weight. And 3 sets, go 30 reps and like 20, then 15, 10. Why 30? Let's get the slow twitch activated and get them out of there. And then, so she did this for about a period of 5 months, 4 to 5 months. I think it was 16 to 18 weeks. Called me up and said, Mike, I got access to the gym now. I finally can get back to the heavy weights. What should I do? Should I ease into it? I said, Cassandra, go in there and load it up. See what you can do. She said, really? I said, I'm telling you, you're going to be shocked. She called me and said, I'm stronger than before, and I have not touched a heavy weight. What in the heck is going on? I said, Cassandra, you're firing your fast twitch muscle fibers deeper. Number one, you've taken slow twitch muscle fibers and you've made them more mature. Think of this. To do a lift or a pull or a punch.
Say that again. Wait, hold on. Back up. You said you got a more mature. Say that again.
Oh, the muscle's way more mature. Think of this. Most power and explosion and lifters, they're underdeveloped on slow twitch muscles and overdeveloped on fast twitch.
Okay.
For you to do a explosion movement, and let's say we're going to get 90% of the muscle, we're going to get 90% of what it's got. And that muscle has a rating of 90. 90% of 90 is 81. What people don't realize is the slow twitch muscle fibers make up part of that.
Okay.
If you deeper fatigue the fast twitch and all of a sudden start recruiting slow twitch in these movements with the bands on, that muscle, which has a power rating of 90, just went to 100. It's more mature. We got studies on this. The slow twitch have become more mature. The fast twitch have become more mature. Now, tell me what 90% of 100 is. It's 90. Now, all of a sudden, your power has gone from an 81 to a 90. And the easiest way to understand it, all these lifters, they get stronger, and it blows their mind because they're not lifting heavy weight.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. I mean, it makes logical sense. I mean, in other words, especially like big people that are like you said, fast twitch muscles, heavy lifters they're not really doing the slow twitch exercise. No. They're basically kind of doing like a mild warm up and jumping automatically into their higher max kind of lifts.
Yeah,
not always, but usually. So this type of process is going to force you to kind of go through the
slow twitch
muscles in order for you to get to the fast twitch a lot faster.
Yeah. Now, look at this now, Hero. What happens to a person who exercises and only fires their fast twitch? What happens to their cardiovascular system over time?
Yeah, it goes to garbage.
What happens when you recruit the slow twitch and you don't get that? You actually get a younger cardiovascular system. Hero, I'm telling you, we're going to have studies on all these bodybuilders. They're not going to get cardiovascular disease because we are activating their slow twitch and releasing a substance called vascular endothelial growth factor. There's studies on this. You got to read about this stuff. It causes reversal of cardiovascular disease when you get a release of VEGF, but it comes off of deep fatigue of slow twitch muscle fibers.
Interesting. That one I've never heard. When we're done here, I'm gonna have to look that up. Interesting.
It's right out on our website. The studies are all there. We got people whose blood pressure's coming down, heart rate's coming down. Why? They're hitting a deep enough slow twitch fatigue to get a release of nitric oxide and VEGF, vascular endothelial growth.
Listen, at the end of the day, at least from my experience, unless you're doing a sport that is like cardio based, usually they have a tendency not to do it. So, you get that with bodybuilders, you get that with like power lifters. It's like they forget, like, hey man, you gotta work on oxygen uptake. You got to increase your mitochondria production in your muscle cells. And they have a tendency to kind of bypass that because they just want to lift heavy weights. Yeah. So this is a way for you to do it without actually doing it, if that makes sense.
Well, let's go back to Scott. Scott, come back now and explain that knee extension study. It's a weightlifting move. Explain that again now that we're just talking about it.
Yeah, leg extension for those that don't know what he's talking about.
Right.
Uh-oh. Seems like Scott's internet is not working too well.
What happened, Hero, is these people are doing a weightlifting move, leg extension.
Correct.
And they compared it to a group doing 60% of 1 rep max, 3 sets of 8. The BFR group doing 3 sets of 30. Both groups increase in strength and size, both fast twitch muscle activation. The BFR group, 28% increase in VO2 max. It's like they're on the treadmill running while they're doing leg extensions because we activated the slow twitch, fatigued them, and then went and got the fast twitch instead of just diving straight into the fast twitch.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because, I mean, if you're constricting the blood flow to the muscle tissue that's doing the actual work, the muscle tissue then is going to say, hey, we need more oxygen. Where's it going to communicate? It's going to tell the brain. It goes back to that afferent system saying, hey, we need more oxygen. Then all of a sudden, your breathing because your muscle tissue is requesting oxygen, and you're basically cutting off the blood flow to that muscle.
That's
so it makes at least to me the ABC the sense is kind of makes sense.
But here's the key.
Okay,
you got to lift lightweight. You put the bands on and go lift heavy weights, you're defeating the whole purpose. You're wasting your time.
Yeah, but the lightweight is, when you say lightweight, I get the actual lightweight, but you mean the actual lightweight or lightweight lift like program?
Oh, if you're used to squatting 225, you need to squat 80 or 90. Because if you go right to 225, you're going to go right into fast twitch muscle fibers.
But are we following the same principles of working out slow twitch muscles? So if you're doing 225 for I'm just taking numbers out of the air. And let's say you're doing reps of like 6 to 10 or 6 to 12. Mm-hmm. Are you then now going to do? You obviously have to lower because of the blood restriction. You're going to have to lower the load, but you're also increasing the amount of reps that you're doing.
We don't have to lower the load, but what we want to do is we want to start off firing slow twitch.
Okay.
So cut the weight in half and do sets of 25 to 30. So I got 2-pound dumbbells, no fast twitch. And probably in about 20 reps, my slow twitch muscles are going to go, whoa, I'm out of oxygen. Now we got the fast twitch. We're going to do a short rest. We're not going to rest a minute. We're going to rest 20 seconds and not let the muscle reoxygenate. And in set number 2, we're going to be feeling all fast twitch muscles. So it's typical reps are 30, 20, 25, 20, 15. If you're doing sets of 4, we're taking out the slow twitch. Now we're forcing the fast twitch. Now here's what's fascinating. This is why strength moves. Okay, so here I am. I'm curling 40s.
Right.
3 sets 8. When I get done with these 40s, I didn't stop because the tank is empty. I stopped because there's not enough in the tank to move the 40. There's some in the tank. If somebody comes over and starts helping me, I can keep going, but it's a heavy load. The muscle starts stopping because of the tensile load. If I got 10 pounders and I get to the same fatigue point of 90%, I got more, don't I? And I go further or deeper into firing and fatiguing of fast twitch muscle fibers. And there's the magic in the more strength and more muscle. But here's the key. When you feel the burn, you know this, you got to keep going. You can't just go, oh, I'm done. If you're willing to keep going, you're going to hit a fatigue and fast twitch muscle fibers without any risk that you've never seen before because it's light load.
Yeah. It makes sense.
And now you got more amplitude, more recruitment. You're gonna
in my mind, I'm also thinking, because you were talking about the VO2 max part, in my mind, because again, I do jujitsu. A good example is like last night. I was doing a very specific training. Mm-hmm. And not exaggerating, I was so cardiovascularly fatigued that I could feel my heart and lungs like worn out.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where, from what you're saying, I can periodically use these type of bands to get a similar response without having to train so heavy.
Exactly. That's one benefit. Benefit number 1 is less work to get a similar response. Benefit number 2, we can apply this to aerobic or lifting, cardio or lifting, and get a more complete recruitment. Benefit number 3, we can hit deeper fast twitch fatigue of the muscles than we're used to. And again, this isn't the end all, but boy, this is a tool that I'm telling you, if you're an Olympic athlete and you're not using this, you're getting run over by somebody who's doing BFR. You're getting destroyed. On the swimming circuit, if you're swimming and not using these, you're not even in the game anymore. All the swimmers are using this. Phelps, they're all using it. Because they're with the bands on, you're hitting a deeper fatigue than the guys without them. Let me give you a story of my son. My son, fastest time he ever ran was a 4.62 40, pretty good. He's a 17-year-old high school quarterback, 6'1". They tell him you got to play wide receiver. Well, we had just finished developing the bands. I sent him to his trainer. So just put them on. Same thing, Vertimax, box jumps, cone drills, all your same speed stuff, and then measuring. So he's measuring him on the curved treadmill, and he's running 19.2 is where he tops out at. Okay. He hit about 20.9 in 8 weeks, went up to Ohio State, ran a 4.35 40.
Wow, that's a big jump. That's a lot.
Now, and here's what it'll tell you. When I'm doing the Vertimax and I'm hooked up to the tubing and I'm doing all that, he's feeling a deeper burn and fatigue than he's ever felt in his life. And it's taken half the time. First time he did it, he's a trained kid. He's on the ground. He's got so much burn. He's never felt it before.
Yeah.
We pushed him deeper in fatigue. He adapted. And there's studies on our website. There's 2 studies out of Japan on speed training of these athletes getting faster in 4 to 6 weeks in 10 and 20-yard dashes. Their gait just
That's
dramatically.
amazing. Yeah. You're saying stop seducing me with all this exercise benefits.
If you use these, I'll tell you, if you use these, you'll call Scott in 4 weeks and you'll go, dude, I would have never believed it. Everybody says the same thing. Todd Durkin, guy that trains Drew Brees and all those, he just had him on yesterday. Him and Gerald McCoy, Dallas Cowboys, called me up and said, I knew what I was going to feel, but I would have never known. He said, I've never felt anything like that. This guy's he's one of the top trainers. He said, well, I got to get everybody using this. It's just, you got to feel it and experience it. So, I mean, you're going to love them if you put them on.
Sounds good. So both of you, I appreciate you kind of coming through. Where can people find, like, who do we want to connect? How do you want, like, direct them to your stuff so that way people can find out more information?
Yeah, Scott will tell you
find more about the bands. Go to finishstrong.b3sciences.com, and that'll give you a link to all the information you need.
Cool. Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it down at the bottom, and we'll take it from there, guys. So I appreciate both of you coming through. Dr. Mike, it was nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
It was a pleasure.
Nice
we'll be talking, and let me know if there's anything I can do to kind of help push your product. It sounds beneficial. It sounds scientifically and logically, it sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you have the science behind you. It's just a matter of getting people to try it and actually use it.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
And that's the thing. Yeah, you just gotta put them on, and the beauty of it is Dr. Mike gives you a 30-day money back guarantee. So, the proof's in the pudding.
Sounds good, guys. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right, guys. So that was two different doctors basically kind of going through the benefits of a new style of training. So to kind of simplify it to everybody so you understand exactly what they were saying, we were kind of going a little sciencey there for a little bit. But because I have people that are also athletes that are not the layman's, I kind of was asking questions that were a little bit more in detail because I want to kind of make sure that everybody just understands it and you're not blindly following what I tell you or what they tell you. The benefit to this is basically it's kind of like what they do high elevation training. You're getting a metabolic response at a much lower threshold, which in turn is going to get more muscular response, more structural response, more hormonal response, which is going to get you bigger, faster gains in a much shorter distance, in a much shorter time, time and amount of effort in order for you to get what you're trying to strive for. So from what they're telling me and from what I understood, it's applicable to both aerobic and anaerobic training. So if you're a tennis player or a walker, you're a person that does nothing, which I highly doubt you're watching this because if you're sedentary, most likely you're not going to be part of my audience. I'm going to probably try to use it for jiu-jitsu. So, check the guys out. Go look at their website. I'm going to put the link below so that you guys can kind of go check it out. And if it makes sense for you, the guy has a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go do it. Invest the money, whatever. I'm not sure how much that is. I'm sure that I'm going to put down at the bottom how much it is. It's worth the time to go try it out because anything that's going to give you even that much of an edge is going to benefit you. Those guys, thanks so much. Appreciate it.